South Carolina. Ladies and gentlemen, our great American comeback begins when we send Joe Biden back to his basement in Delaware. Spends a lot of time on vacation as it is as president. We might as well make it permanent, and we will get that done. It's wonderful to be here. My wife, Casey's going to come up and say a few words in a few minutes. She is a graduate of the College of Charleston down in the Low Country. And we always love to be back here in South Carolina. I can tell you, you saw the other day, I guess it was yesterday, the president was at an event and had a little fall on the stage there. And look, it happens, not something that you want to see for anybody, but unfortunately, I think that was kind of a metaphor for how our country is going right now. Because we seem to be stubbing our toe, falling down, not doing things the right way. The country's clearly going in the wrong direction. Look at what's happening with the southern border. Look what's happening with inflation and all the economic squeeze we see. Look what's happening with Biden trying to kneecap our ability to produce our own energy. Look at this bureaucracy that seems like it's weaponized against people like us. If Hunter were a Republican, he would have been in jail by now, and we all know that that's the truth. Look at American cities overrun with crime. Look at the woke mind virus infecting all these institutions in our society. Look at what we experienced for the last 3+ years with medical mandates and lockdowns instituted in some cases by the federal government. And of course, coming off Memorial Day weekend, we remember the 13 service members that we lost in Afghanistan due to the dereliction of duty of Joe Biden as Commander-in-Chief. And the reason we're in this rut is because we have an entrenched political class that is pursuing their own interests, not your interests and not the nation's interests. 5 of the 7 wealthiest counties in this country are suburbs of Washington, D.C. How does that happen? Washington's not producing very much other than mountains of debt and a lot of hot air, and yet you have this wealth that's there near our nation's capitals because it's the politically connected that benefit. And it seems like if you're just out in the rest of the country playing by the rules, working hard, they're stacking the deck against you more and more. I grew up a blue-collar kid. My mom was a nurse. My father worked for the Nielsen television ratings company. Back then, they would actually have to install a device on the family's cable box to be able to get the ratings. It was a different time, so he did that. And I was basically taught, you're entitled to nothing. You got to go earn your way in this world. You got to work hard. And so that's what I did. I started working as a teenager. I worked my way all through college and stuff to get degrees, to try to put myself in a position to do something with my life. But I only did that because I just believe that in America, if you work hard and you make the most of your God-given talents, there's going to be doors open for you. I believe that very strongly then. I wouldn't be here today if I didn't believe that. But I wonder how many people believe that for young people now looking forward. And if we lose that as a country, then we've lost what's great about America. So, in fact, I remember I actually learned things about government too, working some of those minimum wage jobs. My first job was working at an electrical company. I was an assistant for an electrician. I showed up my first day, and I got sent home immediately. And I said, what did I do? I'm sent home already? And I showed up on time. They said, no, we couldn't tell if the boots you had on were approved by OSHA. I didn't know what OSHA was. And so I went home and I figured out it was a federal agency that said that they needed to be OSHA approved. So I went out and bought some that were OSHA approved. But that cost me my whole first week's paycheck to do that. So I learned a lesson about government. This was supposed to protect me. I don't think I was any safer as a result, but I was definitely a little bit poorer as a result. And so we continued to work hard, put ourselves in a position because we believed in the American dream. Well, the country is in a bad state. I don't think American decline is inevitable. I think it's a choice that we as Americans will be making over these next few months. And I'm running for president because I think we have an opportunity to choose a better path, to choose a better course, and to reverse the decline. We need to restore sanity to our society, normalcy to our communities, and integrity to our institutions. Truth must be our foundation, and common sense can no longer be an uncommon virtue. I can tell you in Florida, we've shown the way. We put facts over fear. We chose education over indoctrination, law and order over rioting and disorder. We held the line when freedom itself hung in the balance. We refused to let our state descend into some type of Faucian dystopia where people's livelihoods were destroyed and their freedoms were curtailed. No, we lifted people up. We protected people's jobs and businesses and rights and made sure our kids could be in school in person. In short, we chose freedom over Fauciism, and we are better off as a result. Now, when you're in an elected position, an executive position like governor or president, you obviously got to be right on the policy. I mean, we see Joe, Uncle Joe, missing the mark on every policy. It's been a disaster. But being right on policy is necessary. It's not sufficient. You also have to be a leader. And there are times when you're called upon to exercise leadership. And so when COVID was raging, when Florida saw fit to follow a different course, I had to buck the media, the left, the bureaucrats, Fauci, even some Republicans to do what I think was right. That was not cost-free. I faced a lot of incoming. I faced a lot of attacks, more attacks than any governor has ever faced, probably in the modern history of our country. I had supporters telling me, man, I know you believe you're doing what's right, but you're getting killed, and you're not going to be long for this world politically, so you may want to just reverse course here. But you know, leadership is about doing what is right, even in the face of intense criticism and opposition. It's about being willing to stand all alone if you need to stand up for the people that you need to look after. And I just had to tell myself, I, as a leader, have to be more concerned with protecting the jobs of the people that I represent than I do with protecting my own political hide. And so I didn't know how it was going to work out politically. Let the chips fall where they may, but I'm doing what I think is right, and I'm going to be able to look in the mirror knowing that I did the right things for the right reasons. And lo and behold, when people see that you're fighting for them under difficult circumstances, man, they have your back as a result of that. It's easy to take the right positions when it's popular. It's harder when you have to do that in the face of a lot of significant headwinds. And that's exactly what we did in Florida. And if we had not stood up when we did, I think this country would have ended up on rolling lockdowns for 2 years, and this country would be way worse off than it is as a result. Leadership, though, is not about entertainment. It's not about building a brand. It's not about virtue signaling. Leadership is about producing results. And in the state of Florida, I'm proud to say we have produced results that are second to none. We are, of course, the nation's fastest growing state, highest net in-migration of any state every year since I've been governor, ranked number 1 in economic freedom, ranked number 1 in education now by U.S. News and World Report, ranked number 1 in education freedom, ranked number 1 in parental involvement in education, which is very important. A 50-year low in our crime rate, and no state income tax. Y'all should try that sometime in South Carolina. I'll tell you, you'll like it. We lean in on issues in Florida. You know, as a leader, if you're in elected office, some people just don't want to get involved in issues. They only make decisions when they actually absolutely have to, because every decision you make, some people will like it and some people will not. And so if all you're trying to do is minimize the people who get dissatisfied with something you do, the best way to do it is just to never do anything. Be a potted plant. Enjoy the trappings. We've also enacted legislation to kneecap ESG in the state of Florida. No ESG in pension, no social credit scores, no woke banking discriminating against conservatives or Christians, not in the state of Florida. When we got hit with Hurricane Ian in southwest Florida, almost a Category 5 storm, it did a lot of damage, but one of the things it did, it knocked out 2 bridges, one to Pine Island and then the causeway to Sanibel. It severed in 3 locations. And these were not state bridges under my control or my government's control. And the local governments were telling people it's going to be 6 months, you better get off these islands because it's going to take a long time to repair that. So the residents came to me and say, Governor, can you help? And, you know, this is another instance. Some people wouldn't want to get involved in that because if you get involved in it, it doesn't go well, then they're going to blame you, right? But no, I'm going to help. So I said, of course I'm going to help. Tell me what we need to do. We need access to the islands. I was like, okay. So I got my guys together and I said, no bureaucracy, no red tape, and no excuses. I'm not waiting 6 months. I want those bridges restored. And so the Pine Island project we took over, didn't take 6 months. We reopened the bridge in 3 days. Sanibel took us 2 weeks. I'm just saying. And I've offered to President Biden, I'll send my Florida builders to the southern border to build the border wall. Let's do it. Let's get it done. But it's a lesson that there's always going to be ways where you can say you can't do something. You know, the job of a leader is to figure out a way that you can do something. We got it done for Ian, and we'll get it done for our country. We've enacted $2.7 billion in tax relief just this past year, including permanent exclusion of sales tax on all baby items, diapers, wipes, cribs, strollers, you name it. You're raising babies tax-free in the state of Florida now. Now, my wife and I have a 6, a 5, and a 3-year-old at home, so we've missed that boat. She asked me when I signed the bill, why didn't you do that in 2019 when we would have been, well, we're trying to combat Bidenflation, doing the best we can. So we're happy with that. We have universal school choice in Florida. Parents have the right to send their kid to the school of their choice. We've been able to appoint 7 conservative justices to the Florida Supreme Court. I had inherited the most liberal Supreme Court in the country. Now it is the most conservative Supreme Court in the country. We've stood up for the Second Amendment by enacting constitutional carry legislation. We're tough on crime, and we've done things like ensure that these criminals have to post bail. No free get out of jail free. Fentanyl dealers are going to go to jail for a long time, and we've even authorized the death penalty for pedophiles in Florida. And we're not defunding the police. We're going to support the police. We're supporting the people that wear the uniform, and we've given bonuses. And when you come to Florida from another state, we give you a $5,000 signing bonus because we know how important it is. Florida's also recognized the menace posed by left-wing prosecutors who get elected, oftentimes funded by people like George Soros, and they get into office and they say, we are not going to enforce a lot of laws that we don't like. So they let criminals get away with committing crimes with no punishment. It causes crime rate to go up. It causes the communities to be hollow out. It's a threat to a functioning society. And so when we had one of those prosecutors in Florida that said there were laws in Florida that he wasn't going to enforce, I removed him from his post. He is gone. We've taken strong action to combat illegal immigration, including banning sanctuary cities, cracking down on smuggling of illegal aliens, sending National Guard to the southern border, and even sending illegal aliens to beautiful Martha's Vineyard. We have protected Floridians against the imposition of a central bank digital currency. You don't know what that is. They're going to try to do this. Not when I'm president, they're not, but they're trying to do it now. You're not going to have financial privacy or freedom if they get away with it. We won't let them get away with it. And in Florida, we're blocking. We're the first state in the country to eliminate DEI from our public universities. They say it's diversity, equity, and inclusion, but in reality, it's an ideological agenda that they're trying to jam down people's throats. DEI, as it's practiced, really means discrimination, exclusion, and indoctrination, and that has no place in our public institutions. Florida has stood up for election integrity. We have banned ballot harvesting in the state. We have banned Zuckerbucks in the state. And we ensure the use of voter ID, not just in-person voting, but if you want an absentee ballot, you must show voter ID for that as well. We have protected Floridians against the imposition of this World Health Organization lockdown treaty that Biden is trying to impose on our country. He's not going to get it ratified by the Senate like the Constitution requires, so we're nixing any attempt to impose that on Floridians. They want to institutionalize and internationalize lockdowns, and we can never let that happen in our country ever again. No vaccine passports, no COVID shot mandates, MNRA mandates, emergency use shots, no gain of function research. See that issue not just through the lens of an elected official, but also through the lens of a dad, of a 6'5" and a 3-year-old. And I just believe, and my wife believes, that the purpose of our schools is to educate kids, not to indoctrinate kids. The schools, parents have the fundamental right to direct the education and upbringing of their kids. Schools and the school system serves a purpose. It supports the community, but it does not supersede the rights of the parents. And in Florida, we've made that clear in our laws. We've enacted curriculum transparency legislation so that every parent in Florida has a right to inspect the curriculum that's being used in their kid's school. And you would think that, of course, parents should know what's being taught, but there's a lot of people that want to lock the parents out. They don't want the parents involved. Why do they not want the parents involved? Look, as a teacher, the more the parent is involved, the better the student is going to do. The hardest students to reach are the ones where the parents aren't involved and don't care about their performance. So the only reason you would want the parents not involved is if you think that the parents, we have is, and this is sad that this is the case, there is smut in the schools now. There wasn't when I was growing up, but there is now. And so parents now in Florida can blow the whistle on this. So if in their 5th graders' library, there is a book with pornographic images, they can say, wait a minute, that's not age appropriate. And so, and it's not, and the schools will remove. Now the media will try to tell you that that is equivalent to, quote, banning books. But first of all, any adult can get any of these books. Nothing's banned in Florida, but you have to make a decision how to curate books in a library or a classroom. You could have a book on George Washington. There's 50 other books you could have. Does that mean you're banning the other 50 because you're not having? Of course not. So you have to make judgments about what's appropriate, and this stuff is not appropriate. So we did a press conference, and we called it Exposing the Media's Book Ban Hoax. And before I talked, before the parents talked, we played a video that just shows of what the parents objected to. The news stations covering that press conference had to cut their feeds because they said it was too graphic to show. Well, if it's too graphic for the 6 o'clock news, how is it okay for a 10-year-old school child? In Florida, we have eliminated critical race theory from our K through 12 schools. We're not teaching kids to hate our country or to hate each other based on their race. Instead, we're putting a renewed emphasis on teaching American civics and teaching about our Constitution and our nation's founding principles, and that the idea that our rights are endowed by our Creator, not by the government, and making sure people understand why people have been willing to fight and die for this country, because all the kids that come out of our school system, they're going to go 100 different ways in their life, but all of them will be citizens of this republic. And we have to graduate these kids with a foundation so that they're not listless vessels as citizens, and they actually have an appreciation for the enduring principles that make us unique as a country. So we're making progress in Florida on that. We've also drawn a very clear line in the sand. It's inappropriate in schools for a teacher to instruct a student that they were born in the wrong body or that their gender was a choice. No gender ideology in the schools. And when we did that, parents in Florida were so thankful. And this is not just Republicans. I mean, parents across the political spectrum, they want education focused on true education. They don't want this stuff injected, particularly in these elementary school classrooms. And so they were very happy. Now, the left was not happy with us. The media was not happy with us. We also had a company in Central Florida that some of you may have heard of that wasn't happy with us. But you know, as governor, I'm there to defend the people of my state. I am not going to subcontract my leadership out to a woke corporation based in California. And so Disney could say what it wants. And I know they're the 800-pound gorilla for many decades in Florida, and they get what they want, but the sexualization of children is wrong. It's wrong when it's done in a school curriculum, and it's wrong when it's done in children's programming, which is what they're trying to do. And so we stood up for what was right. And we also, we reevaluated. They had a ridiculous arrangement in Florida where they controlled their own government for 50, 60 years. They were exempt from laws, major tax breaks. No one else enjoyed that. Basically joined at the hip with the state of Florida. But look, we couldn't be joined at the hip with the company that's going in the direction of the sexualization of minors. And so we ended Disney's self-governing status in the state of Florida. Now, there's some of these Republicans that are attacking me for standing up to Disney. Can you believe that? Here's all I'll say. We oppose the sexualization of children. We will do battle with anybody that seeks to rob them of their innocence. And on those principles, there will be no compromise. We will never back down. And we've also stood up to protect women's sports. And Riley is a remarkable young woman. has had a great career and done so many great things. I can tell you, if you get to know her, this is somebody that has their head on straight, and she's got a great set of values that guide her life, and we're honored to have her support. And part of the reason why we feel strongly about women's sports, look, my wife and I have a 6-year-old daughter and a 3-year-old daughter, in addition to a 5-year-old son. Girls and women athletes deserve the right to compete with integrity and with fairness. And these are great opportunities for them. Their competition shouldn't be corrupted by political ideology, and it's not fair to rob them of opportunities. But there's also the larger issue at play that when you have someone swimming on the men's team for 3 years, and then that swimmer switches to the women's team, and the NCAA crowns that swimmer the women's national championship, when they ask us to recognize that, they're asking us to be complicit in a lie. And that I refuse to do. I will not tell that lie. And it's sad that we even have to discuss this, but it is wrong for physicians to perform sex change operations on minor children. And in the state of Florida, we recognize that for what it is. It is mutilation, and you will lose your medical license and go to jail if you do it. So we are proud to stand to protect our children. It's sad that we've had to do so much. And it used to be the children were off limits, right? Now we've got a lot of negative forces doing down. So we've done that in Florida. My wife has been a big part of doing that. We're very family focused in Florida. We did not bring our kids on this, but they will be up in South Carolina soon, so don't worry. We take our responsibilities as parents very seriously and are sympathetic to what parents are going through in this day and age, because it's hard to raise kids. It's hard to raise kids with these devices that everybody has and social media and all the influences that they're trying to do. So for the parents of this country, just know my wife and I, we've got your back. We're going to fight for you. Don't worry. And before we do that, I want to bring up my better half. So she's back there somewhere. Ladies and gentlemen, a graduate of the College of Charleston, and our nation's best First Lady,
well, first of all, how excited are you to vote for Ron DeSantis for President of the United States, right? Standing up for parents. I mean, it's an honor to be back in South Carolina, College of Charleston graduate. By the way, my sister and brother-in-law, C-17 pilots, they were stationed up in North Charleston. My dad was at MUSC, so for a while there, we were all back in South Carolina, so it's good to be back home. I'm excited to be here for a lot of reasons, obviously advocating for the better half, but I'm also happy to talk to somebody older than the age of 5. I'm not gonna lie. We have a lot of conversations with the little one that seem like hamster in a wheel kind of conversations where they go on and on. But they were talking, Riley, by the way, who's a great advocate for women's sports, and obviously you've got some great legislators here who have passed some wonderful legislation, as did the governor down in Florida. It's funny, our kids are starting to play sports a little bit. This morning, the governor and I were FaceTiming with our 3 kids, and they were in the midst of swim lessons. I don't think they're up to Riley's stature yet. They were fighting over unicorn goggles, but it's okay. At least they're making their way across the pool. Our daughter, our 3-year-old Mamie, by the way, so she's the littlest. She's 3. Then you have Mason, who's 4, and then Mason, now he's 5, and Madison is 6. So Mamie has started to play softball. But for a 3-year-old, she hasn't quite grasped the rules yet of the sport. So she hits the ball, and instead of running to first, she runs to third, which is great. And then when she gets there, she starts building sandcastles. So it's baby steps. We're not on Riley's level yet, but hopefully we'll get there. But I mean, it's a privilege to be able to raise young kids in the governor's residence. And really, we're the first family in about 50 years to have small children. Mamie was the first baby born to a sitting governor in more than 50 years. And so it's always an adventure. So I'm so proud of everything that the governor has accomplished, but here's why it matters. Because so often you see people who run for office, they say they're going to do all these wonderful things, and then they get up to places like Washington, D.C., and they go rogue. They go native. they forget why they're there. They become these listless vessels that are just bending in the wind. They're putting their finger in the air to try to take polls to see which direction that they need to go. They're more interested in politics, and they never deliver the accomplishments that the people expect them to deliver upon. But that is not true, as you've seen with this governor. When he says he is going to do something, bank on it, he gets it done. And how refreshing is that for politicians? You know, and the other thing I love about this guy, too, is that he's not afraid to pick on a fight. He's not afraid when the media comes after him. He's not afraid when the left comes after him, because he gets attacked. I don't know if you've turned on the news any time as of recent, and it seems like he's getting attacked from every direction. But one thing I can tell you, and I feel like I have the responsibility to come out here and say this, because I see him in front of the cameras, and I see him at home behind the cameras, and I see him with his kids, 6, 5, and 3. He never changes. He never wavers. He never backed down. He always, always stands up for what's right. He does not take the path of least resistance. He doesn't cower. And it really is refreshing to see that somebody is standing up for what is right, standing up for the rights, liberties, livelihoods, and happiness of the people that he was voted to represent. And that was true in spades when you saw COVID. I can tell you stories of moms in the midst of COVID, single moms coming up to me with tears in their eyes because they didn't know how they were going to be able to put food on the table for their kids. They didn't know whether their children were going to be able to get an education, to be able to live up to their God-given potential. But they were so happy that the governor was the one who held the line for them. They didn't have the voice to be able to go out and advocate their position, but they knew that he was fighting for them and that he had their back. And for that, I am forever proud of everything he's done. And so at the end of the day, we need to protect the idea of America. We need to ensure that our children, who are currently destroying the house, but it's okay because grandma's there, so our children, by the way, coloring on the dining room table with permanent markers. When he's signing all this legislation, he brings home all of these Sharpies with him, and the other day we had the little one, 3-year-old, and so but it's fine. We'll get through it. But we're trying to protect and defend America for our children, for your children, for your grandchildren, so that they can live up to their God-given potential in the greatest country in the world. And when he gets elected President of the United States, we are going to show the world that the best of America is yet to come, and you're going to make that happen. God bless you.
All right. You know, when we first moved into the governor's residence in 2019, we had a 2-year-old and a 9-year-old, and we were mindful of whatever damage they may have wrought. And I just asked, do we have to put down a security deposit to move in? And we didn't. But I will tell you this, after like a month or two, there's a living room that we use. There was this like nice rug, and all of a sudden, like the people that run the governor's mansion just kind of rolled it up and got it out of there, because I think they knew it would not be long for this world with our kids in there. But we thank the First Lady for all she's done. She's really been remarkable across a wide variety of ways, obviously as a wife and my best friend, but also as a mother. But what she's done for the state of Florida, she's done an incredible job across a wide range of issues. So here's the deal. What we've done in Florida shows us that we should have some hope for this country. It can be done. I got elected by 32,000 votes in 2018. My state was considered a perfectly divided swing state, 1-point races in either direction. People told me to not rock the boat when I got in because I might upset this delicate political balance and help the Democrats. Of course, I rejected that advice and I went headstrong in and we were bold. But fast forward 4 years later, we didn't win by 32,000 votes. We won by over 1.5 million votes. largest Republican gubernatorial victory in the history of the state of Florida. We won independents by 18%. We won over 60% of Hispanics. We won women by 8%. We even won urban areas like Miami-Dade County, 2.8 million people in that county alone. And Hillary had won it by 30 points in 2016. We not only won it, we won it by double digits as a Republican. And so, but it's not just about me. When you're leading a ticket, you have a responsibility to help the other candidates who are running. And so we did that, and we now have super majorities in the Florida legislature. We helped elect 4 additional Republicans to the U.S. Congress, and we probably wouldn't have the majority if that hadn't happened. And then we also helped elect 29 new conservative school board members throughout the state of Florida, which is very important. And for the first time since Reconstruction, there is not a single solitary Democrat elected in statewide office in the Sunshine State. That is what you call winning, and winning big. And that's what we need to do nationally again. The other thing Florida's experience should show you, and my wife mentioned it, I don't sit here and puff smoke. If I say something, it means I've thought about it, and it means I'm going to act on it. So if I tell you I'm going to do something, you can take it to the bank. When I get in there, we're doing it. And there's not anything we're not going to follow through on. And so I can pledge to you as president, we're going to be an energetic executive. We're going to be on offense. We're going to take on these issues head on. We are going to reverse Biden's disastrous economic policies that are causing people to have a lower standard of living. Our dollar is 20% almost less a value than it was 4 or 5 years ago. We need to have an economy focused on small businesses, not big businesses. These big businesses made a fortune during COVID. The small businesses were getting hammered. That's got to be the focus of our economy. We also have to have fiscal sanity in this country. We're $31 trillion in debt, for crying out loud. And you just had this debt deal in Washington. Our country was going broke before that deal, and it's still going broke after that deal. They're greenlighting $4 trillion in additional debt for Biden to take him through the rest of his presidency, locking in COVID-era levels of spending, which are grossly inflated. And even those 87,000 new IRS agents that we've been railing about as Republicans, they're only reducing that by 2%. So this is not a deal that is saving this country. This is a deal that's more of the same. Look, in Florida, we run budget surpluses. We have a $1.2 trillion economy in Florida. It would be the 13th largest economy in the world if we were a separate country. And yet, $1.2 trillion economy, our state debt is only $17 billion. That's the second lowest per capita debt in the entire United States. So don't tell me these things can't be managed better. We also need, if you want to help our economy, we need to expand American energy production here at home. Open it up. Reverse Biden's policies. He wants to turn us into Germany or California. It's not going to work. We also need to have an economy that is not dependent on the Chinese Communist Party. Stop sending things to China. Make more stuff here in the United States. You know, as a Republican, I've been hearing about the southern border for probably my entire adult life. And I've heard a lot of rhetoric over the years, and here's what I can say. As president, I will be the one to finally bring this issue to a conclusion. We are going to shut the border down. We're going to build a border wall. We're going to end mass migration to the United States. And we are going to hold the Mexican drug cartels accountable for the carnage that they've unleashed on this country with the fentanyl. We are going to usher in a reckoning about the federal government's disastrous COVID-19 policies. the lockdowns, the school closures, the restrictions, the vax mandates, the whole shebang, we're going to bring about accountability for the people that perpetrated those bad policies, because we have to make sure that it can never happen again in these United States. We understand that woke ideology represents a war on truth itself, and so as president, we will wage a war on the woke. We will fight the woke in schools. We will fight the woke in the corporations. We'll fight the woke in the halls of Congress. We will never surrender to the woke mob. We are going to leave woke ideology in the dustbin of history where it belongs. As Commander-in-Chief, we will on day one move to revitalize our nation's military. I'm somebody that served in the U.S. Navy, served a tour in Iraq, and at the time, this is after 9/11, I had put myself in a position working a lot of those minimum wage jobs to have a lot of opportunities because I had acquired education credentials. I could have made a lot of money. But I made the decision to serve because I felt that when the country needed people to step up, I shouldn't rely on everyone else to do it. And so I wanted to do my part, however small that was. I wanted to serve. And so I would have made a lot more money had I not done that. But I'll tell you this, when you serve, when you're able to wear the cloth of your country, when you're able to serve alongside other patriots, and when you're serving a cause greater than yourself, well, that's a satisfaction that money just can't buy. And so I'm proud of the service. I'm proud of all of your service who serve. I know we have a lot of Marines in the house because I ran into a few of them. So thank you. It's something that you should be proud of to have served in our nation's military. And yet it pains me to have veterans come up to me now and say they would not want to see their kids or their grandkids joining the U.S. military because of everything that's going on. They're imposing a political agenda on the military, woke ideology, all these gender ideology, all these things. And what are they doing when what's the effect of that? They are driving warriors away. Recruiting is low. Morale is low. So we're going to go in on day one. We're going to take all that Biden nonsense and we're ripping it out by the roots. And we are going to restore this nation's military to its proper glory. And we need a strong military. We got China. We got threats. We got to be able to project that power. And we'll do it. We'll get it done. As president, I will have a firm recognition that our constitutional system is woefully out of whack. The Founding Fathers designed a system with 3 branches of government: legislative, executive, judicial. They did not design a 4th branch of government. They did not design an administrative state. They did not design a so-called deep state. And we are going to go about the work, very difficult work, of reconstitutionalizing the federal government. We're going to go in on day one. You'll have a new FBI director on day one. You know that. Not every candidate can say that. But when you have weaponized government, when you have FBI going to school board meetings to potentially surveil parents who are just concerned about things like CRT and mask mandates, when you have a pro-lifer protester who has FBI agents swarm, the home, when you see this uneven application of justice, just understand the Founding Fathers would have predicted that. If there's no constitutional accountability, and if these agencies are allowed to accumulate power without any checks and balances, human nature tells you that power will be abused. So they would have predicted exactly what's happening here. So what we need is a president who is disciplined, a president who is focused, a president who's going to be unrelenting, on breaking up this power that has accumulated over all these years. You can't do it in 24 hours. If someone says they can do it in 6 months, that is not true. This is something that is going to be trench warfare day after day after day, but it needs to be done because I think the future of constitutional government hangs in the balance. We cannot continue to have most of the major decisions in this country that affect our society or our economy decided not by your elected representatives, but by nameless, faceless bureaucrats issuing regulations. No economic or social transformation without representation, and we need to restore that sense of the Constitution, and we need to return this government to its rightful owners, we, the American people. And you can't do that. You're not going to be able to get that done if you don't have the humility as a leader to understand that you can't do it alone. Yeah, you can make the best decisions, you can have the best policies. If you don't have a cadre of people serving in your administration who share the vision, who are willing to put the vision and the mission ahead of their own personal interests, and who are going to understand that there are going to be some sacrifices here because they're going to face blowback too if they're going in and doing the right thing. If you don't have that, then none of this is going to amount to very much. And so I'm very aware of the need to have good personnel in an administration. We've done that in Florida. I mean, you look at some of the people we have. Go look up my Surgeon General, Joe Latipo. He's like the anti-Fauci. He's standing up against all this crazy stuff, and he's doing what's right. Now, he gets hit because of that. So you need people who just understand the name of the game. So, for example, Attorney General. You can't have an Attorney General that doesn't have a backbone. You must have a spine of steel when you go into that job, because if you're doing what needs to be done to bring accountability to agencies like the DOJ and the FBI, the media is not going to like that. The left is not going to like that, and they're going to smear you. They're going to attack you. So you either know that and you're fine with it, and if it's something that's going to bother you, you're not going to be tough enough to do the job. I'll tell my Surgeon General, Joe, I'll say, you know, I haven't followed what you've been doing lately, but I see the media is attacking you, so you must be on the right track if that's what they're doing. But the personnel is not just who's at the top as like Attorney General. It's also all the people, thousands of people who fill all these positions. And you can't just recycle people from Washington, D.C. You got to get people from outside of D.C., inspire them to put their lives on hold in their community, move to the nation's capital, and serve in the administration for 2, 4, 6, 8 years, whatever it takes to get the job done. You know, this bureaucracy for too long has imposed its will on us. It's about time we impose our will on it. And there's going to be a lot more stuff that we're going to do. We look forward to rolling out a lot of really exciting proposals, and I think the sky's the limit, but only if you win the election. And there's no substitute for victory. And this party of ours has developed a culture of losing over recent years. I look at this debt deal as bad as it was, but I think to myself, you know, we have 49 Republican senators. We should have 55 Republican senators right now. We've given away some of these elections for no reason. So we need to get winning again. But here's the thing. In 2024, we're not getting a mulligan on this one, okay? We got to get it right because the stakes couldn't be higher. If the Democrats are able to sweep into power, they will try to pack the U.S. Supreme Court with liberal justices. They will try to abolish the Electoral College. They will try to make Washington, D.C. a state, so they get 2 additional Democrat senators. And they will try to eliminate voter ID in every jurisdiction in this country and mandate that every jurisdiction have ballot harvesting. That's not an agenda that's speaking to the kitchen table concerns of the average American family. It's an agenda where they're trying to ensconce themselves in power for a generation. And if they're successful in doing that, the damage will be incalculable and likely irreversible. President Reagan used to say, no, it's tough. President Reagan used to say freedom's only one generation away from extinction. It's not passed along in the bloodstream. You got to fight for it and cultivate it. I used to think that was an exaggeration because I thought freedom was just in America's DNA. Yes, you could have maybe some liberals get in and raise your taxes and do things that aren't good, but could we really see our freedoms taken away from us in our lifetime? Well, if you've lived through the last 4 or 5 years, you realize how fragile freedom is. We had a federal government that was trying to prevent people from earning a living if they didn't take a COVID-19 vax under emergency use, no less. And so that is raw power being exercised against the American people that I would not have contemplated even 5 or 6 years ago. And our founding fathers understood this. When Benjamin Franklin walked out of the Constitutional Convention in 1787, he was asked, "What did you give us, Dr. Franklin, a republic or a monarchy?" He said, "A republic if you can keep it." Because they understood we had a responsibility to be stewards of the heritage of freedom. And I'm motivated to do this. And look, I'm willing to take the arrows. That's fine. I'll do it. And I'm motivated to do it because I think that, yes, it's an inflection point for our country. I think if we fail in 24, the idea we're going to come back 4 years later and fix this, I think that's a pipe dream. I look at my kids and eventually, hopefully, we'll have grandkids someday. Same with you, great kids and grandkids. We want a free country for them. But I'm also motivated by a sense of obligation to the people that have come before us. We just came out of Memorial Day, and I used to fly up to Washington, D.C., and there was a particular flight path you could take going into Reagan Airport that took you flush parallel to the National Mall. So that if you looked out the left side of the plane, you would see panoramic views right up close of our nation's monuments like the Lincoln Memorial, the Reflecting Pool, the Washington Monument, and even perched up on the hill in the distance, the U.S. Capitol building. A beautiful sight, and it's inspiring to see that kind of up close in person from the air because you feel proud to be an American. You see those values and the principles that those monuments represent. But after doing that trip a few times, I realized the best monuments that we have are not out the left side of the plane. Because if you looked out the right side of the plane, you looked over the Potomac River, you saw small monuments, nondescript, orderly arranged over the rolling hills of a place called Arlington National Cemetery. And it occurred to me that you could have the best Declaration of Independence in the world, you could have the best Constitution in the world, but ultimately, if you don't have people when duty calls who are willing to put on that uniform, risk their lives, and indeed give that last full measure of devotion to this country, then none of the ideals and the political leaders, even as great as they are, like George Washington, none of that will amount to very much. And so we owe them a profound debt of gratitude. We're not called upon to offer sacrifices even remotely close to what they do. We do have it in our power, though, to reverse this nation's decline. It's going to require us to carry what George Washington called the torch of the sacred fire of liberty. It requires us to stand firm for the truth. It requires us to be resolute in defense of our enduring American principles that have made us unique amongst the community of nations. And my pledge to you is this: I will fight the good fight, I will finish the race, and I will keep the faith. And if you nominate me as the Republican candidate for president, then you can set your clock to January 20th, 2025 at high noon, because on the west side of the U.S. Capitol building, I'm going to have this left hand on the Bible, I'm going to have this right hand in the air, and we will be sworn in as the 47th President of these United States. No excuses. We will get the job done. God bless you, South Carolina. I'm asking for your vote, and I'm asking for your support. Thank you very much.
give me a minute. Is that better? All right. I'm nervous as a cat on a hot tin roof, so y'all don't have to worry. Anyway, I appreciate it. I'm Rex Rice. I'm the senator from Pickens County. Pickens County's got the highest point in South Carolina, and that means we're closest to God, so they've asked me to come do the prayer. I would tell you this, you know, my public speaking, I'm 30 years in politics, and it gets worse every year. But I do a better job of talking to God than I do other people, and I do a better job of explaining my position to God because He already knows it. And other people, so y'all just going to have to listen to my prayer. But I do think you need to do this. I think everybody in here needs to thank God for the things He's given you and ask Him for what you need. And just do that yourself. With that, will you bow your heads, please? Father, thank you for this wonderful day. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. Father, thank you for sending your Son, Jesus Christ. He means so much to us. He gave His life, and you sent Him to deal with our sins. Father, we appreciate the men and women of the armed forces. Memorial Day was this week. All those men and women that gave their lives so that we could have freedoms just like we're here today in this country. Father, be with our South Carolina Guard as they go to the Texas border and defend our border. Thank you for all of those men and women that are donating their time to go down there. Father, thank you for the first responders that we have, the law enforcement, the EMS, the firefighters. And Father, just help to remember J. Michael Mueller that was killed this week down here in the Low Country fighting a fire, serving for us. Father, thank you for Ron and Casey and for what they do and the fact that you've encouraged them to run and be the next president of the United States. Father, we need them bad. Father, we just ask for time in prayer. We ask for healing of people that need their healing. We ask for a peaceful campaign. We ask for victory, whether it's victory on earth or eternal victory. Father, we need it. Father, we pray for our enemies because we have plenty of them. And Father, we just need to learn how to come together. We pray for wisdom. We pray for knowledge. And we pray for courage so that we can run a campaign that is peaceful to the people that we serve. Father, we just ask that we say the right things at the right time and don't say the wrong things at the wrong time. Our country is divided, and we need to bring it back together, and we can do that. Father, just help us to respect those people that may disagree with us, and we can disagree and respect each other. Father, unite the United States of America. Father, be with not only this team, but all the teams that are campaigning and provide safety for them. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. Amen. At this time, I'm going to bring Representative Micah Caskey up here. He's a former, I say former, my dad would get all over my case if I said that. My dad is a Marine. He's actually in the grave now, but he would, if I ever said former Marine, my dad would get on my case. He is a Marine, so thank him for his service. He's going to do the pledge.
Thank you, Senator. Ladies and gentlemen, so glad you're here. You know, they say in South Carolina there is more patriotism in this state per square inch than anywhere else in the country, and I don't know of anything more true. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's time to introduce you to the new Patriot Power Generator 2000X. It's our newest solar power generator with 2 times the power of our previous best-selling model. Simply
and I'm like Senator Rice. I don't speak a whole lot, but I try to do the right things and say the right things to make people feel good and let you know how I feel. I'm Bill Hickson. I'm in the insurance and real estate business in North Augusta. I'm a small businessman. but I also serve in the South Carolina House of Representatives. I'm the new chairman of the House Ag and Natural Resources and Environmental Committee. But it is my honor today to be here with you today to hear from someone ready to bring our country back to having law and order again. As you may know, I supported a candidate for president a few years ago, mainly known to folks now as he needs to talk less and listen more. When he became the president, I was so excited, but frankly, right now, I've lost my excitement. For many of the reasons, and really I mean so many reasons, I want to be here today to let you know that we can today make a clean break with the past and focus on a much brighter future than is waiting on us today. But we need to put Governor DeSantis in the White House, and he'd be our next 47th president of the United States. Knowing where we are as a nation, I know our next president needs to be Governor Ron DeSantis. He's proven himself as governor of Florida. He's a man who has worked hard to get his education and a law degree with honors. He distinguishes himself with a great military service to our country. He stared terrorist hatred for America in the face at Guantanamo Bay and never blinked. He worked with the Navy SEAL Team 1 at a forward base. He knows government has to be accountable to the people at all times. Ron DeSantis always takes the lead and is known as a world leader by him being governor of Florida. And look what he did during the COVID crisis. He kept that state going. He used good common sense. Florida was open 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And I think that's a wonderful accomplishment, Governor. The governor's wife, Casey, graduated from the College of Charleston. That's right here in South Carolina. And welcome back to South Carolina, Miss First Lady. Casey's parents live in Aiken County, and I think they're here today, and I would like to meet them. And Aiken County is part of my house district, so I would sure love to meet you. She's not just a neighbor, she's our friend. So when you become the next president of the United States, we welcome you back to South Carolina to visit your family here. I know y'all are tired of hearing what I have to say. So the governor is the man that understands how to make government for the people and not over the people. A man that means what he says. So if you would, give us a great Palmetto State welcome to Governor DeSantis and his wife, Casey.
Hello, South Carolina. Are you ready to begin our great American comeback by sending Joe Biden back to his basement in Delaware? Spends a lot of time on vacation as it is. We might as well make it permanent, and I'm happy to oblige in that. We're excited to be here. We're going to be able to hear from my wife, the great First Lady of Florida. We'll have a little chat in a few minutes, but I'm just going to make a couple opening remarks. Look, I think one thing that you can know about me is that when I tell you I'm going to do something, I don't just say that because I think that may be what you want to hear, then get into office and forget all the promises I made. If I tell you I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And that's just... And I think we've seen that with what we were able to do in the state of Florida. We in Florida chose facts over fear. We chose education over indoctrination. We chose law and order over rioting and disorder. We held the line when freedom itself was hanging in the balance. I refuse to let the state of Florida descend into some type of Faucian dystopia where people's livelihoods were destroyed and their freedoms were curtailed. No, we protected people's rights. We protected people's jobs. We protected people's businesses. We protected our kids' right to be in school in person. In short, we chose freedom over Fauciism. And the thing about it is, when you get into a position as a governor, president, an executive position, yes, you got to be right on policy. I mean, we see Biden fumbling policy and the country's going in the wrong direction. But being right on policy is necessary, but it's not enough. You also got to be a leader, and you've got to be willing to exercise leadership in those critical moments. And so for us, when we decided we were going to chart our own course during COVID, we were bucking Fauci, the bureaucracy, the media, the left, even a lot of Republicans to chart our own course. I was taking a lot of incoming from that, probably more incoming than any governor has ever taken, and I was getting hammered every day. And even some of my supporters would call me and they'd say, hey, you may need to reverse course here. Like, you're getting killed. You're not going to be long for this world politically if you keep, I know you think you're doing the right thing, but man, think about saving yourself here. And, a leader can't let whatever short-term political calculations there are trump what is right for the people that he represents. You've got to be willing to go out there, and you've got to be willing to stand your ground in the face of intense opposition and criticism, even if you have to stand all alone. That's what you're called upon to do. So I resolved I'm going to care more about protecting the jobs of the people I represent than I am about saving my own job. I don't know what'll happen politically. Who cares? Do what's right. And, at the end of the day, leadership is not about entertainment. It's not about brand building. It's not about virtue signaling. Leadership is about producing results for the people that you represent. And if you look at Florida, we've produced results across the board. I mean, we're the fastest growing state in the country. People tend to go places that are well governed and they leave places that are poorly governed. Is it just a coincidence that they're fleeing California and New York and Illinois? Of course not, because they're poorly governed states. We're #1 for net in-migration, #1 now by U.S. News and World Report for education, #1 for education freedom, #1 for parental involvement in education. Crime rate is at a 50-year low. We have no state income tax. You all should try it sometime. It works out very well for us. And we have the second lowest debt per capita ratio of all 50 states. The federal government should try that sometime. It's much better. We've accomplished a lot because we lean in on issues. A lot of people, you get into office, every decision you make, some people like it and some people don't. So a lot of elected officials, they say, well, I'm just not going to try to make any decisions. I'm not going to get into issues unless it absolutely comes on my desk and I have to make a decision. But that's not leadership. And so we go on offense. We make sure that we're doing everything we can to protect the vitality of the state and the freedom of our citizens. So just in the last few years, we've been able to do a lot. And here's just a sampling. State of Florida, we have signed legislation banning the purchase of land by the Chinese Communist Party and its affiliates. We have signed legislation kneecapping ESG in the state of Florida. No ESG in the pensions. No woke banking discriminating against conservatives. No social credit scores in the state of Florida. We have enacted the heartbeat bill, the strongest pro-life protections in modern Florida history. When we had Hurricane Ian hit our state last September, it was almost a Category 5, and it initially hit in Southwest Florida. It did a lot of damage, but one of the things it did, it actually knocked out a bridge going from the mainland to Pine Island, and it severed the causeway going from the mainland to the Sanibel Island in 3 different places. And these were not state bridges that were under our control. They were local. The local residents were being told, you better get off those islands. It's going to be 6 months before traffic will be restored. So they came to me and they asked for help. Now, this is another thing. Like, some people get in, if it's not their responsibility, they don't want to do it, because if you get involved and something goes wrong, then you get blamed, so people get worried about it. But I'm like, of course I'm going to help them. So I was like, all right, I'll help. We'll take it over. What do we need to do? So I got my guys together. I said, listen, no bureaucracy, no red tape, and no excuses. I want this stuff done, and we don't have 6 months to do it. So we took over the job for the Pine Island Bridge. Instead of taking 6 months, we reopened the bridge in 3 days. And then in Sanibel, took us another 2 weeks after that. And incidentally, those guys that did that building, I've told Joe Biden, I will send them to the southern border to build the border wall. I'll do it, just let me know. But what it shows is there's always going to be ways you can say you can't do something. There'll always be easy excuses that you can proffer. My view is just find a way to get things done. And so we were able to do that on the bridges and on so many other things. We've also enacted the biggest tax relief in Florida history, $2.7 billion, including permanent elimination of sales tax on all baby items: cribs, strollers, diapers, wipes, clothes, you name it. You raise babies tax-free in the state of Florida. Now, my wife and I, we have a 6, a 5, and a 3-year-old now. When we first became governor, it was 2 and 9 months. We didn't even have our 3rd yet. So after I signed the tax relief for the baby item, that included the baby items relief, my wife said, why didn't you do this in 2019? We would have saved a lot on diapers. But, you know, we didn't have Biden inflation back in 2019. So it's we're doing what we can to help. We've also enacted universal school choice in the state of Florida. So parents can decide where they send their kids. When I became governor, Florida had probably the most liberal state Supreme Court in the entire country. I've now appointed 7 conservative justices, and we now have the most conservative Supreme Court in the country. We've supported Second Amendment freedoms by enacting constitutional carry legislation. We are a law and order state and have enacted policies to be tough on crime, making sure they have to post bail before they get let out, making sure fentanyl dealers go to jail for a long time, and we have also authorized the death penalty for pedophiles in the state of Florida. And we support the police in Florida. We support law enforcement. We're not going to defund the police. We're not going to attack law enforcement. And in fact, the last 3 years, Florida has done $1,000 bonuses for every single police officer and firefighter in the entire state of Florida. We're a big state. That's a lot of folks. In Florida, we've recognized the menace posed by left-wing prosecutors who get elected usually with big campaign contributions from people like George Soros, and they get into office and they decide they're going to let the criminals get off the hook. They won't prosecute many laws that we really need prosecuting in order to keep order in society, and chaos starts to reign supreme. The areas get hollowed out. People actually move from these cities because of how bad things get. Well, in Florida, when we had one of those prosecutors say that he wasn't going to enforce laws he didn't like in our state, I removed him from his post. He is gone. We're cracking down on illegal immigration in the state of Florida. We have banned sanctuary cities. We're cracking down on human smuggling. We've sent National Guard to the border to help with what's going on down there, and we even sent illegal aliens to beautiful Martha's Vineyard. We've signed legislation protecting Floridians from the imposition of a central bank digital currency. If you don't know what they're trying to do with that, read up on it. We're not going to let it happen in Florida, and as president, we won't let it happen in the United States. But they want more control over what you're doing. We are the first state in the country to fully eliminate so-called DEI from our public university system. They say it's diversity, equity, and inclusion, but in reality, it's ideology, and it's an agenda that they're trying to shove down the throats of students and even faculty. DEI, as it's actually practiced, is actually better characterized as discrimination, exclusion, and indoctrination, and that has no place in our public universities or public institutions. We've banned ballot harvesting in the state of Florida and Zuckerbucks in the state of Florida. And we have good, strong, transparent elections. We've also protected Floridians against Biden's attempt to impose the World Health Organization lockdown treaty on America. We're not going to let that happen. We're pushing back. We govern ourselves. We're not governed by the WHO. We've also enacted protections for medical freedom, no vaccine passports, no COVID shot mandates, MNRA mandates, emergency use mandates, no gain of function research. In Florida, we actually did that. Of all the things that we've done, one of the things I'm most proud of is what we've been able to do with education, because I see that issue not just through the lens of a governor, but also through the lens of a dad, of a 6, a 5, and a 3-year-old. And we believe the purpose of our schools is not ideological indoctrination. Indeed, that's not an appropriate use ever of schools to be able to do. We believe that parents have a fundamental right to direct the education and upbringing of their children. The school systems are important, but they're there to support the community. They're not there to supersede the rights of parents and what they think is appropriate. And so we've enacted protections for parents, such as curriculum transparency, so that they have a right to know what books are being used and what curriculum is being taught to their kids. And unfortunately, there's bad stuff that's getting into the schools. There's pornography that's getting into the schools. So the parents have had to blow the whistle in Florida. They've had to, yeah, well, thank you. We're not going to let you impose an agenda on our kids. We're going to stand up for our kids. We're going to make sure to do it right. That's what we're going to do. Yeah. Those people like that in Florida are the people we beat every single day on policy. We do not let them win. We win all these battles. We're not letting them indoctrinate our kids, not on our watch. And so the parents have found this stuff, and so then they'll go and they'll blow the whistle, and the media will say, oh, that's a book ban. If you remove inappropriate material from a library, somehow it's a book ban, which is just not true. Because in whatever's in a kid's classroom, you make decisions. You have one book about George Washington, there's 100 others you could have. You're not banning the other 100 just because they're not in that library. So you have to make decisions about what's appropriate. It's not appropriate to have this pornographic material in there. And so we actually did a press conference to highlight this, and we called it Exposing the Book Ban Hoax, because it is a hoax. But before I said anything, before the parents came up, we just played the video that had the images that the parents were objecting to. The local news stations had to cut their broadcast because they said it was too graphic to air. Well, if it's too graphic for the 6 o'clock news, how is it okay for a 10-year-old school child? We have eliminated critical race theory in our K-12 schools, not teaching kids to hate this country or to hate each other with your tax dollars. We're supporting civics education, teaching kids about the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, teaching them about what it means to be an American, because all of them, no matter what they do in their life, are all going to be citizens of our republic, and we need to give them a proper foundation of why America is what it is and what are our founding principles. And so we're doing that in Florida, and we're proud of it. We've also drawn a line to say it's inappropriate for a teacher to tell a second grader that they may have been born in the wrong body or that their gender is a choice. No gender ideology in the schools. And when we did that, the parents in Florida were thrilled because, you know, they just want the basics. They don't want the schools off kilter with all this. And so the parents liked it. Now, the left did not like it. The media did not like it. And we had a little company in Central Florida you may have heard of that also didn't like it, you know, named Disney. But, you know, Disney's view is that it's appropriate to be teaching a kindergartner that somehow they can change their gender. That's totally unacceptable to be going on in schools. And so, you know, and unfortunately, there have been videos that have come out about Disney where some of their executives are talking about, you know, it's their agenda to put sexuality in the young kids' programming, which as a parent, I don't think is appropriate and I don't think is right. So they've gone in that direction, and they were opposing us on parents' rights. A lot of people in Florida say, hey, man, they're the 800-pound gorilla. They get everything that they want. There's no way you're going to be able to get this done if Disney is opposing you. You're going to have to back down. Well, here I stand. We haven't backed down 1 inch. We do what's right. And, you know, even some of these Republicans now are taking Disney's side, saying that somehow I was wrong, you know, to do what we did. But let me just say very clearly, we stand for the protection of our children. We will fight anybody seeking to rob them of their innocence, and on those principles, there will be no compromise. It's also wrong to have a swimmer competing on the men's team for 3 years and then switch to the women's team and then be declared the women's national champion. That is not acceptable for the opportunities for our girls and our women athletes. Like, I have 2 daughters. My wife and I are sensitive. We want our girls, if they so choose, to compete with fairness and integrity. We're actually supported in our campaign by a very brave young swimmer named Riley Gaines. Have you heard of Riley? And so in Florida, we protect women's sports. Part of it is to make sure the girls have the opportunity, but part of it is just, you know, we have to be more to the truth in this country. And when you go 3 years on the men's team, switch to the women's, and they say you're the women's champion, we know that's not true. And we've got to be clear about that. And it's sad that we even had to do this in Florida, and I think you guys have done it here. Other states have had to do it, but it's wrong to have a physician performing sex change operations on minors. And yet you see that happening. So in Florida, it's very clear. We think that that is mutilation. We think that that is wrong. And if you do that as a physician, you're not only losing your medical license, you're going to jail as a result. So I think what Florida shows is that, you know, you can take all these principles and beliefs and values that we hold, and you can actually win big victories and institute that as policy, and then you see the state is doing better than ever. And politically, I got elected by 32,000 votes in 2018. We were like an evenly divided state. People told me, hey, trim your sails when you get in as governor. Don't rock the boat, because if you do, you could end up capsizing it in favor of the Democrats. Of course, I rejected that advice. I said, I'm going to lead boldly, and that's what we did. But fast forward 4 years after that, we didn't win by 32,000 votes. We won by over 1.5 million votes. That was the largest Republican landslide in Florida history in a governor's race. You know, we won independents by 18 points. We won Hispanics with over 60%. We even had, like, obviously we do very well in rural and we did very well in suburban, but even in urban areas like Miami-Dade County, 2.8 million people, our largest county by far. Hillary Clinton had won that county by 30% in 2016. We not only won it, we won it by double digits in Miami-Dade County. That's winning. And here's the thing, these elections are team efforts. It's not just about you. You have a responsibility to help the people up and down the ballot, and that's exactly what we did in Florida. We now have super majorities in our Florida legislature. We helped elect 4 additional Republicans to the U.S. Congress, and we probably wouldn't have the majority if not for that. And we even elected 29 additional conservative school board members throughout the state of Florida. And for the first time since, I guess, Reconstruction, there is not a single solitary Democrat elected to statewide office in the Sunshine State. That's what you call winning. Florida also shows that when we say something, we mean it. When we say we do it, we'll follow through. So I can pledge to this as president, I'm going to be a very energetic executive. We are going to go on offense. We are going to start from day one, and we are never going to look back. We are going to reverse Biden's disastrous economic policies that are making it more difficult for people to make ends meet. We're going to stop spending this country into oblivion with the spending and debt and printing money. This debt deal that they're talking about, we were going bankrupt before that debt deal, and we are still going bankrupt after that debt deal. They're giving Biden $4 trillion in additional debt through the end of his presidency. They're also keeping these inflated levels of spending, and even the 87,000 IRS agents, they're getting rid of like 2% of those, which is totally inadequate. In Florida, we run budget surpluses. Our debt is $17 billion, but our economy is $1.2 trillion. If you compare that to the federal government, our national debt is much higher than our overall size of an American economy. And so we need to bring some fiscal sanity to Washington. We will do that. We also need to unleash American energy production and be energy independent. We also have to focus the economy on small businesses, not these big, massive corporations. During COVID, the biggest businesses got bigger and they did better. Amazon, all these things. Meanwhile, if you were in California or Illinois, New York, you were a small business, a lot of them got put out of business by that. And so we have to have a small business focused economy. We have to have an economy where hard work pays off. Because it seems like under Biden, people that do the right thing end up having to pay the bill for what the ruling class is doing. You know, I was growing up, I was a blue-collar kid. My mom was a nurse. My father worked for Nielsen television ratings. Back then, to get the ratings, they had to install a device on the cable boxes. And so that's what they did. His father was a steel worker in Western Pennsylvania. So I was blue-collar, told you're not entitled to anything. You've got to earn it. And you've got to earn your way in this world. So I worked minimum wage jobs as a teenager all the way through school for years and years to help put myself in a position to be able to succeed. And the only reason I did that was because I believed in America, if you work hard, if you make the most of your God-given talents, you're going to be able to do well. You're going to be able to do good things. And we're losing that in this country, and we need to get that back. Ours will be look, as Republican, I've been hearing about things like the southern border for so long. I've been hearing complaints about it for so long, and yet it's worse than ever today. So our pledge is that our administration will be the administration that finally brings the border issue to a conclusion. We are going to shut the border down. We're going to build a border wall. We're going to stop mass migration, and we are going to hold the Mexican drug cartels accountable for the carnage that they have unleashed on this country, and we won't stop until we do that. We will also usher in a reckoning for the federal government's disastrous COVID-19 policies, everything from lockdowns and school closures to MNRA vax mandates, the whole shebang. If nobody is held accountable, they're just going to repeat this in the future. So we're going to bring accountability. We're going to make sure that history is clear about what went wrong. And the only way that we can be sure it'll never happen again is to hold people accountable, because we can't let this happen to our country ever again. I believe that woke ideology represents a war on truth itself. And so as president, we will wage a war on the woke. We will fight the woke in the schools. We will fight the woke in the corporations. We will fight the woke in the halls of Congress. We will never, ever surrender to the woke mob. We are going to leave woke ideology in the dustbin of history where it belongs. On day one, we're going to take swift action to restore the glory of the U.S. military. And as somebody who was a veteran, I'm working on these jobs, getting education, all this stuff. Fortunately, I had an opportunity to make a lot of money, but I decided, this was after 9/11, and people, was all volunteer, people were stepping up. I was like, as an American, I've got to do my part. However small, I've got to do. So we volunteered to join the Navy. We ended up serving in the Navy. We did a bunch of different duties, including a tour in Iraq with Navy SEALs, as they had mentioned. And, even though I could have made a lot more money, I look back and, the satisfaction you get from being able to wear the cloth of your country, to be able to serve alongside fellow patriots, and to be a part of a mission that's bigger than yourself, well, that's something that money just can't buy. And so I appreciate those who wear the uniform. I thank everybody here who has served, and I thank all of our veterans who have served. But I think what's happened now, and I have veterans coming up to me telling me they would not recommend their kids or grandkids join the military because of the wokeness, because of what they did to harass people on the COVID vaxes, for all these different reasons. They're driving warriors away. Recruiting is in the basement. When I was in Fallujah, Iraq, you still had people that were showing up to Parris Island in South Carolina to join the Marine Corps because they believed in the mission, in the country, and they believed in the service. And now it's like it's hard to find people to want to do it at that level. And these people knew they were going to get sent to Iraq. So we need to restore morale, and I think you restore morale by taking all the politicized policies that Biden has instituted. You rip them out on day one and say, we're going to mission first. We're going to treat people based on merit. We are not going to be playing the woke Olympics in the United States military. And so we will get that done. We will also take action to restore our constitutional system. Founding fathers devised 3 branches of government: executive, legislative, judicial. They did not devise a 4th branch of government, an administrative state, a massive bureaucracy that is unaccountable to the average American. Right now, most of the major issues that affect our economy and society are not decided by your elected representatives. They're instituted by nameless, faceless bureaucrats who you will never have the ability to vote out of office. You should not have social or economic transformation without representation. And of course, as power has accumulated, that power has become sharp. It's become weaponized against people that don't share the ruling class's values and worldview. I mean, if Hunter were a Republican, he would have been in jail by now, and we all know that's true. So we're going to go about it day one, understanding this is a momentous undertaking. Day one, well, day one with me, you'll have a new FBI director in place, which is important. But day one, this requires the president to be disciplined. It requires the president to be focused. You can't get lost in distractions, because this is a daily thing where you have people who have a lot of power, and they are not going to give that power up willingly. So this is a tough fight, but it's a fight that we're going to get done. And don't let anyone tell you, oh, I'll get rid of all this on day one, or I'll finish it in 6 months, or all that stuff. This is a big, big issue, and it's going to require somebody that's very disciplined over a very extended period of time. And I pledge to you I'll be that guy. And part of the reason we'll be able to do it, part of the reason we're going to be able to do it is because I have the humility to know that, look, I may be the elected official. I may ultimately have to call the shots, put forth the vision and all. That's very important. But none of that amounts to anything if you don't have people surrounding you who believe in that vision, who are going to work in the administration and implement that at the ground level. If you have a bunch of people in your administration who are going to sabotage the agenda, then what good are you doing in the first place? And so we're going to ask, and I realize you can't just recycle the same people from Washington, D.C. We need people from outside of D.C. You know, we need people from South Carolina and Florida and Texas and everywhere. And I'm going to ask people, I'm going to say, look, we need good quality people to serve in this administration, because there's thousands of positions that we need good people to fill. And you may need to pick up your family for 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, 8 years, move to Washington, D.C., and serve in the administration. Because, you know, the bureaucracy in D.C. has imposed its will on us for long enough. It's about time we, the people, impose our will on it. And that's exactly what we're going to do. But here, and we're gonna have a bunch of other good stuff that we'll be love to talk about here in South Carolina and elsewhere over the next many months. But here's the thing: you can't get any of this done if you don't win. There's no substitute for victory, and we have to dispense with the culture of losing that has enveloped our party in recent years. You're not going to get a mulligan on this 2024 election, and understand the Dems are playing for keeps. If they sweep into power in 2024. They are going to try to pack the U.S. Supreme Court. They're going to try to abolish the Electoral College. They're going to try to make Washington, D.C. a state. And they are going to eliminate voter ID laws in every corner of this country and mandate ballot harvesting be allowed in every corner of this country. That will be an attempt to lock themselves in power for a generation. And if they're able to do that, the damage is going to be irreparable. And so our freedom is on the line. President Reagan used to say freedom's one generation away from extinction. It's not passed along in the bloodstream. I used to think that was an exaggeration. But after living through the last 4 years, 5 years with COVID and everything else that's gone on, I don't see how you cannot recognize that our freedom is fragile. And it really falls upon us to do all we can to preserve it. And we have to do it for our own sake, our kids, our grandkids' sake. We also have to do it because we owe a debt of gratitude for those who have sacrificed for us, so that we can be free people. And I'm reminded of that coming off this Memorial Day weekend. I used to take flights up to Washington, D.C., and there was one particular route the plane could take going into Reagan Airport that took you flush parallel to the National Mall. And if you looked out the left side of the plane, you would see these beautiful views of the Lincoln Memorial, the reflecting pool, the Washington Monument, all these other monuments, and then up on the hill, the beautiful U.S. Capitol building. And you feel a sense of pride, because I think those monuments and buildings are symbolic about what America represents. But after doing that trip a few times, I realized the best monuments were not out the left side of the plane. Because if you looked out the right side of the plane, you looked over the Potomac River, you saw monuments that were very small, nondescript, but they were orderly arranged over rolling hills in a place called Arlington National Cemetery. And it occurred to me that you could have the best Declaration of Independence in the world, you could have the best Constitution in the world, you could have the best political leaders in the world like George Washington himself, but if you don't have people that are willing to stand up, put on a uniform, risk their lives, and indeed give their lives so that we can be free, well, those principles aren't going to amount to very much in the end. And so I think we owe it to them and the people that have made great sacrifices on our behalf to make sure that we're not fumbling this football on the 1 yard line and squandering our freedoms. And so we're not asked to make the same type of sacrifices they made, not even close. But we are called upon to be responsible stewards of this great American experiment. We're required to carry on the torch of what George Washington called the sacred fire of liberty. We're required to stand firm for the truth, and we're required to remain resolute in defense of these enduring American principles. And my pledge to you is this: is that if you nominate me as our candidate for this election on January 20th, 2025 at high noon, you can set your clock, because on the west side of the Capitol, I'm going to have this left hand on that Bible. I'm going to have this right hand in the air, and I'll be taking the oath of office as the 47th president of these United States. No excuses. We will get it done. We'll make it happen. I'm going to bring the First Lady up here now. We're going to talk a little bit more. God bless you guys. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Can I say something real quick? How excited are you to make him the next president of the United States?
So, First Lady here, first of all, obviously a great wife and mother, but she's done a tremendous amount of service for the people of Florida. She's not compensated. She just does it because she wants to help people. And so, we'll talk a little bit about some of the stuff that we've got going on in our household. But before I do that, I wanted to give her an opportunity to talk about some of the initiatives that she has done, because I think this is a model for the rest of the nation. And I think when you talk about what we believe as Republicans or conservatives, we ultimately understand, government's not the solution to these problems. And government has a role, but it needs to be a proper role. And she's understood that better than ever and has had some great success. So take it away.
Well, thank you. First of all, it's very humbling and it's a privilege to be back in my home state of South Carolina. So, College of Charleston, not going to tell you what year because it's getting a long time ago. Parents were in Mount Pleasant. By the way, my sister and my brother-in-law were C-17 pilots based in North Charleston for a while too, so it really is home for a lot of us. But I appreciate what the governor was saying, because, we're both of the mind, when much is given, much is expected. And when he was elected, I looked at the opportunity that I had before me, not as it was about me, it was about the position of First Lady. When you have that platform to be able to do something, what do you do? So I was very fortunate. I went around and I traveled around the state of Florida, which, by the way, was lovely. There's a lot of great places in the state of Florida, going down to the Keys and whatnot. But I had a chance to talk to folks, particularly in the child welfare sphere, because that really is where my heart is, with single moms and children in the foster care and adoptive systems, and also moms who are pregnant battling substance abuse, and children aging out of the foster care system. And I wanted to have a better understanding of what some of the key stakeholders were saying on the ground and how things operated. One thing I learned very quickly was that there are a lot of great people on the ground, exterior of government, who are doing great things, but they were all siloed. So you guys can probably understand this. You had the faith-based community doing wonderful things, but they were over here. You had the private sector here, you had the nonprofits, you had the state government, but then there was oftentimes very little communication and collaboration on the best interests of people in need. So we decided we were going to change that a little bit. So what we did in the Department of Children and Families, and that is the agency within the state government that oversees the child welfare sphere, we decided to launch an initiative called Hope Florida. So what is that? Basically, we have Hope Navigators. Navigators are folks, so when you have a single mom who is in need of help, instead of just giving them a TANF grant recipient or money or government assistance and saying, I'll see you in 6 months, I hope it goes well for you, what they do is they hold the hand of that individual and look exterior of government. So they look at all of the nonprofits available at the community to meet her needs in the beginning. But what's amazing is that if they find that there aren't any nonprofits that are servicing the needs of that single mom, we're one of the first states in the nation to tap into the faith-based community in a really meaningful way. We utilize a technology called Care Portal. Care Portal is something that our navigators use. So let's say the single mom, she's having a hard time putting food on the table, she needs bunk beds and mattresses and just needs overall help. We literally input that into a system that goes out to our participating faith-based communities in the form of an electronic alert via an email or an app. They see that in real time and they say, yep, you know what, I can actually do that. We can get a bunk bed together. Yeah, we can get our team and our congregation to cook a home-cooked meal, and they can literally deliver that to her front doorstep. So now what has happened in this philosophical change about the way we approach government, government is a communicator and a collaborator, and then they get out of the way. And what we find is those inputs going into the Care Portal system are usually done only once. And you find, well, certainly that mom has more needs than just that. But what has happened is a communication and a collaboration has now happened between the good people who are already doing wonderful things on the ground and some people that they never knew were in need of services like that single mom. Since we've started this, and there's a lot of layers to it, we've been able to help transition off 5,300 people off of government assistance or partially off of government assistance on a pathway to economic self-sufficiency. And these are single moms. When I see what we do to bring the private sector involved, so if they are in need of a job and they say, hey, listen, we can't work a 9 to 3, I would love to, but I want to pick a 9 to 5 rather. I'd rather work 9 to 3 because I want to pick up my children from school. I want to be there to help them with their homework. So what we do is we ask the private sector, we say, hey, Walgreens, will you partner with us and help employ the single mom? And they say, yes, we'll employ her 9 to 3 or whatever it might be to be able to support her so she can support her kids. Another great thing that he's done as we tap into this initiative is his fatherhood initiative. So he has done about $70 million reoccurring funds to help support children in need of mentorship for these single moms. So when they're out working, we provide opportunities through our collaborators to get mentorship, big brothers, big sisters. He's done a lot with Tony Dungy because we find the single greatest thing that you can do is to provide these kids a mentor. If you show them value and worth and show them that they are capable of whatever they put their mind to, they will succeed. And so we're facilitating these opportunities for these kids. And so we've really piped out a pathway for a lot of folks, but this whole philosophical change to government, what we've done in the child welfare sphere really doesn't end there. We've taken it to Veterans Affairs, meaning how great would it be for the faith-based communities to know that you have a veteran down the street. They get a care portal alert saying, hey, can you cook him a home-cooked meal? Because sure would be nice if you can show up at his front door and say thank you. We've facilitated those connections, and we're making a big difference, and we're doing it to a lot of other agencies too. So this is just a different way, I think, that we just approach government.
Yeah, no, it's been really, really good. So I see this water bottle, and it reminds me of a story with Casey and me and our kids. So before we had kids, I was a member of Congress, and we went to Israel on a trip. So you can bring your spouse. So she came, and we got to see a lot of stuff. And so when we were at the Sea of Galilee, she had an empty bottle of water, and she filled it up with water and said, we're going to use that water to baptize our kids when we have kids. And so we brought it back. And the good thing is you bring that back to Israel, like, it's not like TSA, like this is like real security. So they saw it, they're like, yeah, that's water, no problem, go ahead, get on the plane. So we didn't have an issue with anything like that. So we brought it back. Our first daughter was born 2016, did the baptism, used some of the water, great. Our son was born in 2018, but this was during the governor campaign, the first governor campaign, all this. And we're like, we don't have time to plan a baptism right now. Let's just get through the election. And so we did that, and we decided, our friends and family are going to be in Tallahassee for the governor inauguration anyway, so why don't we just do it then? And so I actually announced in our inauguration speech, we're dispensing with the inaugural parade, which I don't like the pomp and circumstance anyways. And so no parade. And I was like, we're going to be returning to the governor's residence where we're going to baptize our son with water that we brought back from the Sea of Galilee. And so we went, we did it. It was great in there. Now, the problem is, we had about half the water left, and we just left it there in this room in the governor's residence. We are not used to having people pick up after us, right? Well, they have staff that do that. And so all they saw was a half-used bottle of water. So the next morning, I asked Casey, I say, where's that Sea of Galilee water? She's like, I think it's back downstairs. And I went downstairs. No, there was no more Sea of Galilee water, so it had been spilled out. So I was in Boca Raton like a week or two later, and we were doing an event, and I came out, and because people had been asking how the baptism went, and I said, listen, because the circumstances beyond our control, we are now out of water from the Sea of Galilee. We don't necessarily have a bun in the oven right now, but, you never know. And so within 24 hours, there were people in Israel digging into the Sea of Galilee, and they sent me this big jar filled with water. I had it on my desk in the state capitol until our third child, Mamie, was born in 2020, and we used that water for her baptism later. So.
Oh, little Mamie, who's 3 years old now, first baby born to a sitting governor of more than 50 years. She is currently terrorizing the House as we speak. You know, my voice has actually gotten better. I don't know if I sound a little hoarse. It's because, you know, we've been doing a lot. We had a great crowd earlier today in Bluffton. We've been doing a lot of great talking, meeting a lot of great folks. The day before, we were up in New Hampshire. We did 4 stops. The day before that, we did 5 stops in Iowa. But that is not why my voice is hoarse. It is hoarse because I spent the day before that talking with a 3-year-old for probably 3 hours as to why she cannot take permanent markers and color on the dining room table. And this happens a lot because you hear of all of the great things that the governor is doing when he's signing legislation. With that comes Sharpie markers, right? Because he has to have a lot of Sharpies, and so they wind up in the house, and no matter as much as I try to move them away, the kids always end up finding them. And I have realized you can move furniture as much as you want to try to hide it. After a while, you just run out of real estate, and you just got to get a lot of paint on the walls. But our kids are awesome. I mean, we could sit up here and talk about our kids all day, 6, 5, and 3, loads of stories. It is a little bit of a challenge, I will say, living in the governor's residence with a small family, first family in 50 years to have a small family, because it's a little bit like living in a museum, you know? It's like look with your eyes, don't touch with your hands, and that's hard to do day in and day out. We have learned, though, that in the beautiful dining room that we have there, there's like early 19th century French wallpaper. It's supposed to be what Ponce de Leon saw when he landed in St. Augustine. It's beautiful. We've learned that the magic erasers do indeed get crayon marks out of the wallpaper, so that is a victory for us. We've also learned that the nice rugs that they have there that have been there for a very long time and have a storied history, you can get slime out of it if you move fast enough. And I was thinking on the way over here, I don't know, because our daughter loves slime so much, and we were FaceTiming in the car on the way over here. I was thinking about my epic slime fails that I've had with her because they've happened numerous times. Like, for instance, if your kids ever want to do edible slime, don't ever do that. That's not a good idea. And the other whopper that I did too with the slime, because that's Madison's thing, she's our oldest, she's 6, was if they actually make slime that you can take a bath and you can turn the bath water into slime, which is not really the best thing to do, especially when you're living in the governor's mansion. So I have a list of things for anyone out there that wants to know how to get things out of things. I got it. I'm good.
Well, when we first went into the governor's residence, you know, we had a 2-year-old and a 9-month-old, and, you know, I was just like, you know, are they going to make us leave a security deposit here? Because, you know, there's just a lot. But I will tell you, there are some of these rugs that people who have visited in, like, you know, the state dining room, oh my gosh, that's a great Persian rug. Like, well, I don't know anything. But it does make sense because when we first moved in, they have a private living room, and so we're there, our kids, and then within like a month, the staff just kind of rolled up that rug and got it out of there. And I always wondered why. And I think because they knew it would basically be leaving it out for destruction. And
they
so
took the silverware too. I don't know about
that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, okay. The silverware too with the kids.
I get it. It's okay. Preserve
well.
Florida's irreplaceable history. I get it.
But I think we, you know, parents right now are going through a lot because it's hard to raise kids. I mean, you know, you have social media. You have a lot of people that have an agenda in terms of what they want to inject in education and all these things. And so, you know, we're living it. We hear what you're saying because it's something that we're grappling with as well. And I just think that if we can as a country, you know, give our kids really good education and upbringing, then, you know, we're really missing the boat. And so this is just a fundamental issue that we've got to get right. We've taken it head on in Florida, been able to get a lot of good things done. And we're going to continue to do that. But certainly as president, you know, this has been to be an issue that we will be speaking out about a lot because it's important.
You know, at the end of the day, you just want kids to be happy. You want them to have a good upbringing. You want them to just be left alone. You don't want to have to worry about turning on the TV and having somebody else's agenda be shoved on them. Why are they insisting that they're putting sexualized content in front of 5-year-olds and 4-year-olds? Let's just leave them alone. And so I would say this, in the state of Florida, we did something pretty special when the governor was reelected. We called on all of the mamas and the grandmamas across the great state to help come on board to help him get reelected. And we had a very ambitious goal, and a lot of people were looking at us like, oh, you're not going to be able to do that. And I said, well, just wait. And so we said we're going to sign up 1 million moms and grandmoms to come out to support everything that he has done for education, standing up against the woke, keeping the schools open. And we didn't meet our goal of signing up 1 million moms and grandmamas. We actually signed up 1.1 million moms and grandmoms. Because I'll tell you, it's one thing when your policies come after me. It's another thing when you come after my children. That's when the claws come out, or our grandkids.
You know, you saw a lot of parents, because when COVID hit, some of these parents didn't have the ability to even get their kids in school, so they're having to do virtual, or they're having to do all this. You know, in Florida, we obviously, believe that these schools had to be open, and so we forced that issue, and, I used the leverage I had to make sure that that happened, but that wasn't the case everywhere. But then I think they started to see what was going on with some of the curriculum, and a lot of parents became very, very concerned. Then you saw how some of the kids would be treated, like forcing them to wear masks for 8 hours a day. That was not based in science. No one had ever said you put a 6-year-old kid. First of all, the efficacy of some cloth mask aside, you have to wear it right anyways. These 6-year-old kids are not, it's dirty. They put it in their pocket. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So we really leaned in on the parents' rights. We fought our local school districts to make sure that the kids didn't have to wear masks, and they fought us, and we won that fight. All these things like, we'll do something, they'll find a liberal judge and try to stop, and we always end up winning. But I mean, this is just, this is another one. And so you saw a lot of that. And I think this whole Disney issue, I think parents look at it and they just wonder, there was never any question when I was growing up about watching any of these cartoons or movies. It was fine, right? And then now, it's like, I hear from parents, like, I was there, within 10 minutes something happened. And that's just not the direction we need to go. We in Florida, it's sad we had to do this, we had to hold establishments accountable for allowing minors to come into like these sexually explicit drag shows. I mean, it's like, why would you bring a 10-year-old kid to something like that? So if they do it, they lose their liquor license and they get fined and all this stuff. So we're doing what we need to do, but there is a concerted effort to kind of go after the kids now, I think in a way that wasn't necessarily true when I was growing up. And so we recognize it and we're fighting back against it.
Yeah, and I would say the people are with us on this, despite what you might hear in other places, because that coalition of moms were not all Republicans. There were a lot of independents and a lot of Democrats that did not like what the left was imposing upon their kids, and they wanted to stand up and fight back. And I think he talked about it in his speech a little bit, but I think it's really important that everything that Florida has led on, you look at his election when he was first elected in 2018, he won by 32,000 votes in a state of 22 million people, right? And then you fast forward, leading on all of these issues, standing up for parents, standing up and defending the innocence of kids. And then he ends up winning by 1.5 million votes in a re-election. And it was a 20-point margin. And so that shows you that when you run and you do what you know and your heart is right, you stand up for moms. And listen, I'll tell you, during COVID, it was particularly, for me, it was tough watching a lot of these moms. We would go out on the road and I would see moms come up to him with tears in their eyes, because when the world was going mad, they were wondering, am I going to be able to put food on the table for my family? Are my kids going to be in school? What's going to happen to their God-given opportunities? I mean, are they going to force these masks on my kid? Are they going to force an mRNA shot on them to be able to go to school? And when he held the line in defense of their liberties, their rights, and their freedoms, and he didn't back down, and he was the voice that they needed, but they didn't have the opportunity to articulate it themselves, I could not be more proud of everything that he did. And you look at the rest of the country and the way they followed suit, and I'm forever grateful for him holding the line.
All right. Well, does anyone have any questions for the First Lady or for me? Is there anything, anything else we need to address? Oh, how we met. Okay.
Good question. That's a story.
So I was a lieutenant junior grade in the Navy stationed in Naval Station Mayport. Do we have any Navy veterans in the house here? Okay. Thank you. Appreciate you, shipmate. And I had not been down there very long, and then she was a TV reporter in Northeast Florida. And, I played baseball all the way through college, and, but that was over, and so I needed to find something to do. So I started to try to learn how to play golf. So I went to a driving range one afternoon in Northeast Florida, and so I'm sitting there, just hitting the balls, whatever. Next bay in front of me, someone had left a bunch of balls there, and then in the next bay in front of that, there was this beautiful young lady hitting golf balls right by me. And so her back is to me, and I'm facing her, and I keep seeing her looking over her shoulder. And I'm like, she's checking me out. I got to go talk to her. The truth is, she was looking to see if I was going to grab those extra golf balls.
That's right.
That's
They
what
were
she
expensive.
wanted. And so, you know, I ended up basically, I ended up using those balls to kind of approach her anyways. And I said, you know, would you like to split these or whatever? And we kind of just, I introduced myself. We started talking. And then, you know, this is like 2006. So there were no smartphones back then. And so I said, hey, you want to go out and after this? And so I got in my pickup truck. She got in her car. And I was new to the area. I didn't really know where I was going, and you didn't have a map on your phone like you do now. So I didn't yet get her phone number. So she's following me, and I'm like, oh gosh, I got to find a place because I don't want to lose her. So I'm driving. Finally, like a mile or two down the road, I found a Beef O'Brady's. So we went there and hung out in Beef O'Brady's, and then I got her phone number, and then we started dating after that, and kind of the rest is history.
Yeah, it's so funny because as I'm following him, we're pulling into like a strip mall, and all I see at first is a Publix, a chiropractic clinic, and like a veterinarian office. And so I'm like, where, you know, like what? And then I saw the Beef O'Brady's. But it's so funny because people always say, did you ever think that you would be in this position? I'm like, oh, no way. Like, he was a cute guy in the Navy. Like, we just met on a driving range, you know. It's just so funny that we wind up here. And
So
honestly, honored.
I saw some people had the book. If you read my book, you would know this. But it's just ironic given what's happened in more recent years. But we actually got married at Walt Disney World, if you can believe that. Now, it wasn't my idea, in full disclosure. And I didn't think of them as, woke wasn't even an issue then or any of that. But she came, you know, because my view on the wedding was, look, it's your day. You know, you run with it. Like, I'm low maintenance. If there's something that really crossed a red line that I wasn't comfortable with, maybe I would chime in. But by and large, you should just do what you want. So she came to me one day. She said, hey, what do you think about if we did the wedding at Disney? And I'm like, Disney? I didn't even know they did that. I was just thinking, like, what are you going to do, like Cinderella's Castle or something like that? Turns out they have a beautiful wedding chapel, and they have facilities for it. But I told her, I said, look, I'll do it, but I just want the wedding to look traditional. I don't want Donald Duck in our wedding, okay? And that was my only request. And so, you know, we ended up doing it, and, you know, it's just funny because we're doing it, we're a newly married couple, and then fast forward, 10, 12, 15 years later, and this is like a source of contention in the state of Florida where we're having to stare them down. You know, part of the issue with Disney that a lot of times the legacy media misrepresents is they had their own government in Central Florida they controlled for almost 60 years. And so the way it was, they were given this government, and they were going to be able to build the park without having to follow any rules, basically, and get tax breaks. But they were going to build communities of residents. So it ended up would have been they wouldn't have governed it, you know, if they would have followed through on that. They didn't follow through on that. They just kept building more parks. And so you have this situation where it's a 40 square mile area where they based the company was the government effectively. And that is not good government, but they were able to sustain that through many decades because of how powerful they were. Well, when we had this issue, you know, we had to look at it and say, okay, this is a company that's now indulging the sexualization of children. That is not a company we can be joined at the hip with. They're free to do business like Universal and SeaWorld does and everybody else. Our business is booming in Florida. We have one of the best business climates in the world. But to put one company on a pedestal and give them their own governing status, that didn't work for me. So we ended Disney's self-governing status in the state of Florida. It was the right thing to do. They have to live under the same laws as everybody else. They have to pay their fair share of taxes, and they're responsible for any debts that they had racked up over these many, many decades. And so we were able to get that done. You know, they sued us. This is a total bogus suit. We're going to absolutely win that. And look, there's a new sheriff in town, and that's the way it should be. I mean, how is it fair to every other person in business in Florida that they have to live under different rules than this one corporation? So, you know, we're proud that we took action there.
And needless to say, we haven't been back. So, you know, one quick story, because I know it's...
But you know, Florida also has Legoland and Peppa Pig theme park and SeaWorld and Universal and all these things.
Yeah, you know, I know it's getting hot, so one more funny story, because I always get this. People are saying, are the kids going to come out and join you? And yes, because, you know, it is very hard, and you get it, parents and grandkids, it is so hard to leave them. They don't understand sometimes why you're going and doing what you're doing, and of course we'll tell them the importance of standing up for liberty and freedom and why you need to be in the arena and fight for what you believe in. But they're going to come out maybe one at a time, because when you have all three that young, it's a little bit of a challenge. You guys well know buckling seatbelts and that sort of thing is not easy. But I was just thinking about, we did take 2 of them when you did your trade mission, when we went overseas. You were in Japan and South Korea, and then on to Israel and the United Kingdom, and that was in the span of a week. He was going over to try to do business and lure, you know, folks to attract to Florida, the free state of Florida, and we brought our 6 and our 5-year-old with us, which we never really got on a schedule, because how do you, right? And so when we got back after this literal whirlwind trip around the world, they were, some of them were Madison was sleeping. I was kind of sleeping. Mason, our son, just crashed. I mean, he was exhausted on the day that we got back. But then all of a sudden, he decided, what was it, like 8, 9 o'clock? I forget what time.
Oh, no, it was like midnight.
Like midnight. He woke up, and he was up, and he was hungry.
Well, first of
I was
all,
going to bed.
we got back that day at 3 a.m. Our oldest had dance practice at 8 a.m. Our other 2 had t-ball at 9 a.m. Then they had a dance recital, then a birthday party, and so we were running on fumes ourselves. But everyone else is getting ready to go to bed. Mason's up, you know, midnight, and he's like hungry, wants dinner. So I'm like, what am I supposed to do? So I take him through the drive-thru at Raising Cane's Chicken Fingers. When you're going through it that time of night in a college town, it was like, I think, college kids who had been drinking and me and Mason going through the drive-thru at Raising Cane's. And it's just funny, because these are just the things that we do as parents. But we're honored to be here. We ask for your support. You know, I pledge to you, we will get the job done. I'm sick of excuses. I'm sick of always trying to explain why things couldn't get done. We're going to get the job done in November of 2024, and then come January of 2025, buckle your seatbelts, because we will be off to the races, and we're going to get all this done. Thank you. God bless.